Absolutely. I think parents a lot of times are looking for tools and resources that will really help their kids get ahead or get an edge. And the first thing, I believe in coaching, hands down, not just because I was an athlete and I'm a coach now, but because I still invest in coaching. The mindset of an athlete, and that's why sometimes I even coach parents, because they're like, okay, I'm stuck too, and so we have all these different times in our lives when that level of accountability and also having a plan, really not having to go and try to figure it all out on your own. Similar to what you do with iSportsRecruiting, it's like, here's your roadmap. And this is what you need to do to get from that 75% to the 100%. For you, it's within getting a scholarship, so not knowing and hoping versus certainty.
Correct.
And for me within coaching, it's like, okay, you're doing good, but you want to do exceptional. How do we get you there? And so that's where that mindset, coaching, and the wellness piece comes in. Thank you for having me on your show as a part of your podcast. I'm really excited for all that you're doing with iSportsRecruiting. It's very, very important, the role that you play as a liaison between the athletes and also the coaches. And so I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, and I have always been an athlete. I always knew that sport was going to be my way of really getting to where I wanted to go, which was really anywhere except for home. I wanted to go as far as possible, as fast as possible. And I love my home and I love my family. I love the Great Northwest, but I just knew that sport was going to take me to my next level. And so I started off, I was a sprinter. So I did the 1, 2, and the 400 meters. I was a multi-sport athlete as well. And I was really involved in, all of our student organizations and stuff like that. But I knew sport was my main thing. In my senior year, my coaches came to me and they said, Amanda, why don't you try the 300-meter hurdles? You've never tried it. We need somebody to do it. And I thought, well,
wow,
I could try that. So I did, and it was great. I mean, I basically sprinted in between the hurdles. I high jumped over them because I had no form.
Oh my.
But I was able to, I think I was second in state or something like that. And ultimately, that's what I got recruited to do because they saw the potential in Nebraska of, me learning, having some form, and then doing the 400-meter hurdles.
And
so,
but when on that time before high school, when did you start practicing sports? You were what, 6, 7 years old?
I was in second grade.
Second grade.
That's when second grade when I started running, and I remember it started with PE because they had us do a mile run. I was like, this is great. So I threw myself into it, and then track and field. It was, a sport that I didn't have to have a lot of experience in. I was kind of behind. I started a little bit later than most athletes. So I did basketball as well all through high school. And then I was...
So that's beautiful what you're saying right now, because you say you started to be later than what most athletes do. So that doesn't mean that's not a stop for you to become an athlete later on when you're 8, 9, 10 years old.
Not at all. Now as a parent as well, I have a little boy who's 8 who's very active in sports. I was homeschooled until I was in second grade, so I didn't really have the opportunity to do organized sports. And I think part of the benefit of that is we start the kids doing sports earlier. I'm giving my son treatments and helping him to now recover because he's training 2 to 3 times a week with games on the weekends, which we didn't have that when I was growing up until at least, middle school or so. So I think the demands on the athletes, especially young athletes right now, it's really important that parents are aware of what's going on, because when we start them earlier, we have to actually support them in a different way too, and their minds. The mindset of a young athlete versus somebody who's in their teens is very different.
It's very different. And let me ask you something. You mentioned you have your kid, your son, very good looking guy, let me tell you.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's 8, so he's doing lacrosse right now. Now, I have a son as well. He's 9, he's in soccer. But I tend to push my kid a lot. And even though that I'm working with student athletes, and I sit down with parents and athletes saying to them, this is a game. This is not, don't take it that serious. We as parents we take it differently, right?
Absolutely.
So that can be a big impact, right? On the mindset to the kids. So take me a little bit on that end.
Absolutely. I think now more than ever before, mindset is so critical because of the world that we live in and the fact that our young athletes are starting very, very early. A lot of that can be driven by parents, especially parents that have been competitive in sports or been involved in sports. And so there's a whole level of understanding. Some of the athletes that I work with in the mindset and the performance space, really it's the parents that are like, hey, I keep telling them, these things about their mindset, but they don't understand what's going on, or they're not listening to me. And I say, my son doesn't listen to me either. It's kind of one of those things about being a parent, but the awareness then comes from the parents of these young athletes to really prepare them, especially coming out of COVID and some of these things that, it's impacting all of us, especially young athletes right now. So the preparation for what's to come begins now. So it is tough to be on the sideline. I'm one of those moms that is yelling and screaming up and down and not like mad, but just like passionate. I was also a cheerleader. So I did track and field, I did basketball, and I was a cheerleader. And I love sport. I think the heart of sport is incredible in where it can take us.
Well, it's a great foundation. I
Absolutely.
think, the foundation, the athletes, nowadays, or in the past and in the future, being an athlete can help you for a long run. It is not just one day to another one. Now, when you went from high school to college, talk to me a little bit about your academics. I mean, how of a good impact was your academics? Because I heard you're extremely good students. So
Absolutely. Academics was always super important to me. I knew that if I had the grades and I pushed myself in high school and I stayed out of trouble and really did what I needed to, I would be able to play sport beyond. And ultimately, I wanted to go to medical school. So that was a huge motivator for me. I was 399. I got an A-. I think it was my senior year. I got an A-. It took my 4.0 down. Wasn't too thrilled with that. But really, and then also just being a well-rounded person. In high school, there's so many opportunities. And I think now, more than ever before, the opportunity for athletes to be a part of things that are going on in the community. How are they showing up as leaders in their life, not just on the field? Because, I was a part of ASB, student council, like all of those things. I was extremely involved. One, because I loved my high school, and that was like my family, my second family. And also,
what's the name of your high school?
Auburn High School. Auburn High School in Auburn, Washington. Yes.
Well, hopefully somebody's listening to us from there.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, a great school. We had a great foundation, a great support there, and then the families and the community. And so, being involved in the community now more than ever before shows that you're a well-rounded athlete and not just somebody that's all about sports or all about themselves, which actually adds to the type of citizen that you're becoming and what you're contributing to your team.
Correct. So that's kind of very important, because on my case, I played baseball since I was 5 years old. Coming from another country, coming from Venezuela, that's all we did, playing baseball. But we didn't took academics that serious. Because to be honest with you, I would love to have, the information that we have right here in the United States in order for us to become athletes, in order for us to find athletic scholarships and so, right? I thought back in the day that the only way that I can get to the United States being a professional athlete. My brother played professional with the Angels, my cousin played with the Tigers, and that was my intention as well, to play, at the professional level and not at the collegiate level. If I would have known that, how important is, the academics, I wasn't a regular, I was just a student like you. I wasn't like I was an okay dude. I would call it a B and a C, most likely C. But yeah, it would be great, for this is what I love recruiting right here, and this is why I'm doing this right now, because the main reason is for us to try to bring this knowledge to the kids, the opportunity the United States have for student athletes. Out of the United States, we don't have these opportunities. Yes, nowadays, because of social media, that helps. Right, that's a big impact, with social media, because nowadays everybody, has a, Twitter and Instagram, and everybody can see what you do. But back in the day, we didn't do that. We didn't have this knowledge or this information that we can share, and then internet, become extremely good, for recruiting. So, this is so important, when it comes to academics. So important. I mean, I'm not saying that, a 3.0 or a 2.5 or a 2.8 cannot be recruited, because that's not the case, because I've seen it in the past. But the better GPA that we have, the more options, correct?
You definitely have more options. And also, I got out to Nebraska, and my story is such that when I got there, they were like, wait a minute. And I was actually kind of headhunted by the throwing coach and our track and field throws department. And he said, you're a hammer thrower. And I was like, what? I'm like, I've been running all my life. I don't want to be a thrower. That's not for me. And he said, just give it a try. And so then they actually bumped me half academic, half athletic. And that was the piece, because if my grades hadn't have been there, and if I hadn't have been able to show up in the classroom, there's no way. But that ultimately is where I found my success, was actually within hammer throwing. So I picked up the hammer. They taught me some technique. I got it down, and that's what I won conference in, and ultimately why I got into the sport of Olympic bobsledding. So part of my story and my encouragement to young athletes is that you never know where things are going to lead you. You never know what steps are going to be the steps that get you to your next level, but you've got to be prepared. And by being academically prepared, I positioned myself to be able to go ahead and be able to say yes to some of those different options.
Excellent. Yeah, so you have opportunities in front of you. So before you talk to Nebraska and before you make the decision to go to Nebraska, how many universities do you approach?
I don't even remember. It was quite a process, because I was, of course, there's support within the schools, but I was doing a lot of it on my own while, juggling sport and juggling academics and all of those pieces. So I can't even remember. Nebraska was the only school that I went on an official visit to.
Okay.
Because I was just blown away. I was looking like, well, maybe USC. I want to be in California.
Did your parents help you a little bit on the process, or?
So I am. My mom is from the Caribbean, so she was first generation Canadian. My dad, he did his associates, but for both of my parents, the whole college scene, like that was very much on me to figure out. So I was writing coaches and trying to, figure out, and my track coaches were helping as well, but it wasn't a process where it was like, okay, and this is what you do. I think there's probably more available now, but you've got to be hungry. A lot of athletes will just come like, okay, I'm good. And I'm like, well, at a certain level, everybody's good. And you might be good, but you have some exceptional athletes that have really honed their craft. And so it's, you really, really have to be hungry. You got to look for opportunities. And that's where what you do with iSportsRecruiting is so amazing, Ronnie, because really it gives these athletes and their parents the tools to actually take those next steps with confidence. And I didn't have that. I was like, okay, what do I need to do? And I was writing and doing all these letters and sending my athlete profile. And so it was very time consuming.
A lot of time consuming, I imagine.
My senior year. Exactly. And so, and a lot of waiting and wondering, which is stressful enough when you're doing SATs and you're preparing for, just your senior experience as a student athlete. So definitely, it was on me. It was on me to get it figured out.
Yeah. Well, taking me back about being hungry, as a student athlete.
So really having a healthy perspective of what you're capable of is going to empower you to really have the confidence, true confidence on the field and off the field. A lot of athletes are leaders, but they're leaders on the field. And so I think it's important that, one, there's a perspective, and then also that they remain hungry. They remain hungry as they're looking for opportunities, because, again, going back to what we were talking about, unexpected opportunities by positioning themselves, not just with club sports, not just with travel teams, but really positioning themselves with as many opportunities as possible. It's going to make it easier to place them within, whatever program, whatever coaches are looking looking for.
Excellent. So that's completely true, based on the experience that you have, as an athlete. And so take me a little bit to those 4 years, just real quick. Just tell me, what was the most impact of those 4 years that you can say, hey, Ronnie, I'm going to take this for life, pretty much?
Well, there were so many impactful moments. First, coming on, of course, my recruiting visit was amazing because you got to see everything. It was like this whole world had opened up. And I look at some of the colleges now and I'm like, what? They have that? Even my university now, it's like massive. There's so much money in the academic and the athletic departments. It's incredible.
I have been in Nebraska.
It's beautiful. And football, like I'm a Northwest, I'm a Seahawks fan, so I'm a big football girl. I know, it's okay. It's okay. We can be friends still. So I think most impactful first was coming onto the campus and just recognizing how many opportunities that I had. Basically, nothing was going to stop me unless I stopped myself. So that was huge. Just recognizing I had all the support in the world. I had the best facilities. I had state-of-the-art, gyms, coaches. All of those things were at my disposal. And so as I was moving into the path of medicine, I knew that was going to be huge for me in terms of, what was possible there. But I think the most impactful piece was I remember seeing Tom Osborne, and it was one of the first times that I came out onto one of the practice fields, and he was just out doing his jog, and I realized, he's a legend in Nebraska sport, so respected, even still now, just an incredible man of faith and an incredible leader, incredible coach. And I remember just observing just the excellence and how when you place yourself in certain arenas in life, you either level up or you downshift. And just really being around athletes that were the best at what they do, as well as being in this arena, I was like, okay, I've got to up my game on every level. And so that's what it initially inspired me to be like, okay, what else do I need to do?
That makes you better athlete, pretty much.
100%.
100%. So that's one of the things that I would love to live, because that's the energy that I see from the athletes. That's the energy that I see from the coaches. So your coach was extremely, helpful on the process, right? Because, seeing, the facilities and seeing the crowd, and that most likely is going to stay with you,
It's true. It's the vision, it's the energy, and that's who you become. You look at Navy SEALs, you look at anybody that does anything at a high level, and you recognize they surround themselves with the best. I always tell my clients, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So when you look around who you're spending most of your time with, that really is your average of how you're showing up and the results you're getting in your life. And so
did you have the opportunity to create the friendship, with the next? You always work with track athletes, or you pretty much interact with everybody?
Well, that's one thing. I think as an athlete, when you go into the athletic department or any of those things, I know in Nebraska, they kind of had us in a bit of a bubble. Everything that we needed was right there in the Hewitt Center. We ate there together. We had tutors together. We had our whole staff that was right there together. So really, that was our second home. And so we definitely interacted with one another as athletes, and it was like a second family. So you leave home and then you go and you find this home away from home in this community that supports you.
So this is good for athletes that don't want to leave their home. Because we've seen that a lot, where I have the opportunity to talk to many parents and kids where they're extremely talented, but they say, oh no, I want to stay 2 miles away from home. And in occasions that can not be helpful, for your recruiting or for your future, because, the opportunities is, there are more than 2,000 universities in the United States, and the United States is quite big of an area, where you can.
And Ronnie, I think you have to really take into account what matters most. And, for some people, it's like, I want to be with my kids and with my family. Some athletes, like, even if they have talent, they're not hungry to go. And maybe that's just, for them, they're like, I wouldn't perform my best if I went thousands of miles away anyways. And so it's about knowing yourself. It's about knowing what you need and knowing what you really want. And ultimately, like, what your vision is. For me, I knew, like, my first plane flight was to college. And I knew, I was like, there's more. So I really had an expansive vision that took me to live in Europe, and my husband's from, over in Denmark and on the bobsledding. Like, it took me to a bigger place, but it was because I wasn't afraid to step out and to leave home. But that was also a part of the heart of who I am in terms of vision.
Correct. So that's extremely helpful. So now, from college, you decided to keep going, as an athlete, and you focus on the Olympics, which that's beautiful. I admire you because of that, because you keep going. You didn't stop. So what bring you into the Olympics?
Well, the Olympics was always a part of my vision. I didn't know how I was getting there. I just knew that I was going. I wanted to be an Olympic gold medalist. Two things all my life. Wanted to be a doctor, wanted to be an Olympic gold medalist. And so as I shared with you, I was recruited to be a 400-meter hurdler. Then when I got to Nebraska, the throwing coach said, "You're a hammer thrower." I picked up the hammer and I threw that for 3 years, and I won conference a few times, and then I went on to the national meet. And at the national meet, my senior year, a man came up to me and he said, "Are you Amanda Moreley?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am." And he said, "Well, I'm Bill Tavares, and I think that you would be a great fit on our national team in Lake Placid for the sport of bobsledding." And I looked at him.
Wow.
And I said, "Bobsledding? Isn't that cold and dangerous? Like, I'm not interested." This is literally what I said. And I had to apologize later on because I was like, I didn't mean to be rude. But you have to, like, I did not want to be cold. I am not a fan of roller coasters. I don't need, like, rides and all this, I was like, nah. And he's like, "Well, here's my card. If you're interested, you change your mind, give me a call." And so I was really trying to decide what my next step was. I had been studying to go to Western Medical School. That no longer was, no longer aligned for me. I was like, I want to do something more. And so later on, I pursued Oriental medicine. But I decided to give Bill a call, and I went up to Lake Placid and tried out. And it was a match for all of my strengths, for my speed, for my physical strength. So they sent us over to Europe, and
Nice.
I learned how to sprint on ice instead of on a track.
That's quite a story. I like it. I like that. I like that.
I still don't like roller coasters. People ask me if I was scared when I got into the bobsled, and I mean, I think you're kind of a fool if you don't.
So you had the opportunity to walk into, which you say 2006 was your first Olympic,
Yeah.
correct?
Well, so I was on the national team for 3 years leading up to that. Then when the Olympic team was selected, I was the alternate. So I didn't get to attend the Olympics, but I was alternate there. So we were in Torino. And then for that Olympics, because it was away, we had to go home. For 2010, my team won gold. There's 3 members of a bobsled team. There's one alternate, and then the brakeman and the driver. And so Kaylee Humphreys was my pilot for 2010, and
Okay.
Heather Moyse was her brakeman, and then I was the alternate for their team. And they brought home gold, and our other team brought home silver in the Vancouver Games. So
Beautiful.
that was for Canada, and then my 06 Games was for the U.S.
So I'm gonna ask you kind of like which one was the most impactful for you, like being represented in the United States or Canada? Which one you feel more comfortable with?
Well, I think I was in a different place for both of them, and it was interesting. Being the alternate always has that like, ooh, almost there, because you don't get a medal, as an alternate, and that was my vision. I saw myself on the podium. So watching my girls get the medal at the awards ceremony later that night, having my husband propose to me, and so we got engaged that same night in 2010. I would have to say 2010 was my most impactful games for sure.
Nice.
And it was home. My mom is Canadian, my dad's American. So all of my family was in Vancouver. And then, you know, of course, Seattle is really, really close. So being able to have my mom and, you know, my godmom, Mom Becky there, that was amazing. So yeah, and looking back on it, I'm like, man, I think no matter what, it was the journey of getting there. It was all the travel, it was all of the pieces in between, you know, preparing to get there. That really, you know, that's what I look back on. I'm like, wow.
Excellent.
Put in a lot, yeah.
That's an unbelievable experience right there. Your 4 or 5, you know, and talk to me about the 4 Ps. You know, which is these for athletes can be, you know, extremely helpful for the ones that are listening right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, so Fortify, I'll kind of give you a background on what Fortify is, Fortify coaching. So I knew that, you know, after I went to school for Chinese medicine, those pieces, I really moved more into like the psychology and even the physical well-being and wellness. So that's when I started my business. It was shortly after the 2010 games. And Fortify is actually the newest business that I've really launched as a result of, you know, just shifting things in this year, 2010 or 2020. It's been a wild year. So
it's been let's call it a fun year. I call it a fun year.
A fun year, yes. F-U-N, fun.
Yes.
So it has been interesting, but what I really recognized, Ronnie, was the fact that people, you know, how you are dealing with setbacks is so critical to you being able to continue moving forward.
Yes.
And so when a setback comes, like what we automatically do, whether it's by habit or whether or not we have the tools, that will ultimately dictate what happens on the other end and how we continue to move forward towards our dreams, towards our goals. And so Fortify is a program that I initially launched, and I was like, okay, it's health and it's wellness. And really, I walk my clients through a 6-month program that really helps them with their preparation, with their resilience and their perspective. So that's the second P, with how they're persevering through hardship and how they're processing those things. And then their patience in the process, just really trusting that they're doing the things that they need to do to be positioned where they want to be. And so Fortify Coaching was birthed out of that, really helping people to get stronger in their physical bodies and in their minds. I work with athletes that are looking to go from that 75% where they're pretty good, like they're good at what they do, to that 100%, so that 25% gap, to help them get to where they really are excelling and setting themselves apart.
Which might be something that parents can do. You know, because sometimes, we can say as parent, you can say, hey, you know, work on this or work on that. But sometimes the athletes will not take it that way. And this is the main reason why we need a coach like you. You know, maybe a coach would really, you know, set us straight and say, okay, this is what we need to do in order for us to achieve, right, our goals, right, and to push that 20% that you mentioned, you know, 25% that you mentioned, the extra push, you know, that's extremely important for you to, you know, to make them understand that section, correct?
Absolutely. I think parents a lot of times are looking for tools and resources that will really help their kids get ahead or get an edge. And the first thing, I believe in coaching, hands down, not just because I was an athlete and I'm a coach now, but because I still invest in coaching. The mindset of an athlete, and that's why sometimes I even coach parents, because they're like, okay, I'm stuck too, you know. And so we have all these different times in our lives when that level of accountability and also having a plan, you know, really not having to go and like try to figure it all out on your own. Similar to what you do with iSportsRecruiting, it's like, here's your roadmap, and this is what you need to do to get from that 75% to the 100%. For you, it's within like getting a scholarship, so not knowing and hoping versus certainty. And for me within coaching, it's like, okay, you're doing good, but you want to do exceptional. How do we get you there? And so that's where that mindset, coaching, and the wellness piece comes in.
And this that's something that most of the athletes probably are prepared to do so. It's just how you can guide them right? Through this process, because some of the athletes, they're really prepared mentally, but some of them were not. And doing that push, with the 4 P's that you're working with all the time with them, that will help them, to make that jump without a question. And yeah, that's pretty much what when we talk about sports recruiting, is that it's that extra help. Is that this is where coaches and athletes and parents is not the same when you talk about approaching 100 schools or approaching 20 schools, in your case it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to get into Nebraska because it was yourself.
Absolutely.
Since having a platform like iSportsRecruiting, this is where we help a lot, to the athletes, where we don't get you into 100 schools, we get you into 800 or 1,000 or 1,500 schools, depending on your GPA, of course.
Well, and also I think sometimes we underestimate things that we don't understand, and so a lot of times we're like, oh, well, it'll just be that simple, and so. You said that a lot of athletes are prepared mentally, and I actually think that athletes might think they're prepared, but they actually don't have the tools in their tool belt for the different scenarios they see just moving into life, let alone university and collegiate athletics. And so that's one of the things. Actually, fewer are amply mentally prepared for what's coming because you don't know what you don't know. And then on top of that, a lot of times, like to your point, when we're like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and talk to all the coaches, or I'm going to send my send my stats to the top college in California or whatever that is. There's a level of, ignorance is bliss kind of thing. Like, okay, I don't know. But the thing is, those are opportunities that are missed, or maybe they're in the wrong timing because you don't actually know what you need to do. And that's why having a coach and having support is so key.
It's important. You bring me back to a blog that I read last week, actually. This guy, they posted that the 10 best way to get recruit. And one of them is saying to avoid to approach a lot of coaches. So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, wait a minute, this is tough because, okay, yeah, everybody wants to go to Nebraska University. Everybody wants to go to Yale. Everybody wants to go to Stanford. Everybody wants to, So this is where, we have to really sit down with ourselves and talk about, what is our best fit right there as an athlete. There's many divisions right there, not just Division I. So this is where, I focus the most when I talk to parents. I love Division III. I love Division III because it's most likely a very fun division to enjoy as an athlete, because they don't do athletic scholarship. They don't give you athletic scholarship, but they give you academic scholarship, and they still need the athletes bad. If you're a good student, like in your case, you go into a good school, academically speaking, and most of the athletes are like that as well. But in occasions when you have a good GPA, correct, Division III can be a huge help or in order for you to play at the collegiate level. So there's plenty to talk. We're gonna be talking a lot about college recruiting through these shows. I'm excited. Like I said, we are in our first episode right here with Amanda, and extremely grateful for your time, because 4 or 5, and I know Amanda is based here in Phoenix as well as I am in Arizona, right?
Yes, beautiful Arizona.
Sunny Arizona.
I know.
Yep, sunny Arizona.
We are definitely, I think the preparation and all of those pieces for any athletes that are looking for that next level of just really coaching where they know they keep hitting a wall. And, they're working as hard as they can, and their parents are seeing them, continually come up to a certain point, but not being able to get over that wall. That's where I love to really support athletes and their families, because really getting clear on what your vision is in terms of what you want to do, in terms of your preparation and your goals, is going to dictate where you want to go for college. And it's also the mindset piece to really move forward in terms of being resilient. So you can find us on Instagram, Fortify Fortify_coaching, as well as, just reaching out to me personally. I'm also on Telegram, Fortify Fit Crew. So that is a little bit more just inspiration around workouts, not as much for my student athletes, but a lot of times for parents that are looking for that extra edge and that extra
Fortify
inspiration.
can help anybody, not
Absolutely.
just athletes.
I definitely, my statement and what I love to put out there is that I help achievers go from, where they are to where they want to be, and to really get strong in their minds and in their bodies. And so a lot of times, when I think of an achiever, they're the individuals that have, for everybody else, it's good, but for them, they're not satisfied. They're hungry for more. I love working with people that are hungry to change their lives physically and mentally.
Excellent. And there is plenty of information that you can find on your website as well, correct?
Yeah, so we are updating everything right now. We're going through a bit of rebranding. So Fortify.com, FortifyCoaching.com will be popping up, and it'll be linked to AmandaMoreley.com. So if you look at AmandaMoreley.com right now, it is in the works and being revised.
Well, that's a great picture, a great image that you have right there with when you were in the Olympics. So I love it.
Well, that was actually a training picture from one of our,
nice.
Or maybe it was a race day. It wasn't the Olympic Games, but in action on the ice, definitely. There's some good pictures there. And then also the links to book a free consultation, 15-minute consultation, to see if what I offer is of benefit to, any of the athletes or the families, depending on where they're at, to help them prepare for what's next.
Well, if you are into, getting your mindset, let's contact Amanda, because it's going to help us. It's going to help us, achieve, and it's going to help you as an athlete and as a parents as well, right? So I want to thank you one more time for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I always love talking sports and passionate about athletics. Love what you do, Ronnie.
Amanda, it's not going to be only one time here. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna bring some new episodes later on.
Absolutely.
We're gonna focus on something different on the next opportunity. But there's definitely a lot more to learn from what we do. And this is the beauty of what I like to do right here. It's just to bring the information to the athletes and the parents on how we can make a difference.
Absolutely.
Because that's the whole deal,
Having
right?
access to those tools is huge. And I think we'll be working through resilience. We'll be working through breath work, which is huge. Really, really great around, relaxing the body and really helping you to be at your peak performance when you need to. There's a whole lot that we can talk about around recovery as well. So there's lots of stuff. Happy to be of service and share.
Plenty to cover.
Love, of course, working with you, Ronnie. Love what you're doing with iSports. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being here. And